I believe in giving credit where credit is due. So before we get into the episode, we are going to name our sponsors. So the sponsors of season 4 are Levo Oil. They were gracious enough to give us a home infuser to be able to make some amazing recipes this season. If you are someone who has been wanting to make infusions at home a little bit easier, definitely check out shop.levooil.com and see if there's something you just have to have in your kitchen. In addition to Temperance Home and Bar. I love Melissa. Melissa has been a true sponsor of our show, working on almost every season with us, and I just love her Botanica. Melissa goes above and beyond to ensure that all of her clients leave super duper happy and are in a better spiritual place than when they came. Please check out the show notes so you can follow her on social media and check out her Etsy page. Let's get into the episode. Thank you for listening to Tutia Bruja. I'm Bex. Okay, so before we jump into the episode, I want to just say a few things. So first, this was recorded a while back ago, and it features my friend Lou, who you might know as At the Death Witch. Amazing human, truly love her. But Lou had a friend that passed recently. Her name was Ibis, and Ibis passed from COVID about a week after her partner, and they left 3 children. The oldest is 20, and it's just so tragic. And a way that I am raising funds, in addition, there's a couple of other raffles that are going on, but I'm also hosting a raffle. If you send me proof of donation to my email, which is bexbcaston@gmail.com, there really is no amount that is too small, so please just send me proof of donation and you're entered to win this raffle. This raffle includes 2 books written by a local St. Louis witch, Melissa Sonova, in addition to a pair of huichol earrings. So if you're into beading, it's a beautiful set of earrings and a bracelet. And Berto, last week's guest, is also made some jewelry. So please, by all means, enter to win that. The details on how to donate are in the show notes. I just want to make sure that we can have as much of an impact on this GoFundMe. So please, if you have a few extra dollars to spare, please donate. Let's get into the episode. We have Lou, who you know as At the Death Witch, one of my favorite humans in the whole world. Thank you for being on.
Thank you. You're one of my favorite humans, and it's always an honor to be with you in any form. It's nice to be able to actually hear your voice as opposed to texting or the gram.
Yeah, we do gram it up a lot. And you're one of those people out in the world that I'm always just wishing for the best for you, because you're someone who truly gets what it means to be a witch. You know what I mean? It's beyond aesthetic, and it's really removing the sludge within yourself and helping the rest of the world do that as well. Not that we all don't have I'm like the petty queen. You know what I mean? I have my own crosses to bear.
I love it, though. It definitely... you're one of the people that I know that I can look to remind me of keeping my own balance. I tend to... I have this funny... I don't know if it's like, an ancestral trauma that I'm not sure what it is, but I have this, or maybe it's just my Gemini, honestly. But I have this, I can see all sides of things. And sure, there's some things that don't have a side. Absolutely. But there are times when I start to feel really passionate one way, and I have to check myself, like, is this justified? And I can't always call up my elders and be like, hey, am I crazy? So it's really nice to have a peer that I can look to remind me of, my own balance and what's important in that.
The reason I had was we need to press record because this is such a good conversation, is the relationship around cannabis, because we have very different perspectives, and I obviously respect your perspective, you respect mine. There's a lot of mother wounds tied to this plant because it's been so unfair. The way that it's been, the war on drugs, was a war on people of color.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. That phrase, it does something to, I have a physical reaction to that phrase. And I remember, first starting to hear that phrase, and then my father like really explaining to me what that meant, and then seeing the impact in my own community of what that really meant and what was really behind that. And later on in my adult life, seeing then, CIA documents being released and having those suspicions and those things that I've witnessed be really, really confirmed in my adult life. It's been a really weird journey for me.
Yeah, it's like the veil's finally been uncovered and like that you were gaslit, you know?
Yeah. I mean, right down to even like the DARE program in my elementary and junior high school experience, and like having those ideals pushed on us, and that introduction to being policed in school so young. There's so many layers to, and I don't even like to call these things drugs because that has a whole other connotation, right? But all these layers to these plants and to the medicinal properties of these plants being so heavily demonized, and we know, what that's all about.
Especially because we're getting to a point where cannabis has been proven with pain management. You have ketamine, which is helping with depression. Mushrooms help with like mental health. So it's really just, it was a war on enlightenment. The idea that people should realize that their quality of life isn't working for them, because I think that that's one of the things that like plant medicine can do. It can be very much an awakening of self.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people, don't want to indulge, don't want to take part because there is such a hurt. Not that I consider you an elder, because we are, like, I consider us peers in a lot of ways, but you have experienced a little bit more life than I have. So I understand that your relationship with like the plants is very much different, because I think with myself, like I always was lucky to live in an area that I guess into the counterculture.
Yeah.
So it was very much normalized that like, this is how we live. And I don't know, like early on I very much got the impression like this is not right. Like this, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And there were a lot of things around me that helped reinforce that. And it's funny because my parents don't take part, but their attitudes were sort of just like, but if it helps, then, so be it.
Yeah.
So it can be very healing. I think it's very easy to get lost for someone to get lost in self and not use it as a healing thing and just use it as an escape. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
that's a layer too.
Which, I mean, and again, I mean, that like, that seeking escape is also a result of colonization, though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just to kind of jump back into the pain management aspect of cannabis, we were never, growing up, my parents were never really like, no, don't do this yet. It was my parents really gave me a lot of room to seek and find who I was. But my father was diagnosed with cancer when I was 17, and he passed when I was 18. And he was a lawyer. My dad was the assistant city attorney. He was up there, and he was multilingual and a highly educated man, one of the best humans I've ever known. But he chose to look to cannabis for pain management towards the end of his life as opposed to narcotics. And that was before things were quote unquote legalized. So, here I am, asking people that I know and have known, growing up to, can you give me some weed for my pops? So it was sad in a lot of ways, years after that, to see then growing up in Denver, seeing then all of these dispensaries coming in, and something that I had to sneak around to find for my father towards the end of his life being just now accessible on every street corner in my hometown. It's really too bad because there have been quote unquote organic growers and ethical growers in Colorado for as long as I've been alive. So it's really too bad to know that a lot of those folks who actually have communed with that spirit for so long were having to hide. And now, I don't know the legalities around the cannabis business. It just seems like, okay, well, if we're gonna, open the market up, then why don't we just allow for people who've been doing this for a lifetime to just be public with it?
So I blanked on someone I know in Denver. The first guest this season was Larissa Bolivar. She has had a very tumultuous history with the plant. She was kidnapped and had a lot of terrible things happen to her because she was a grower in Denver, when they were trying to legalize it, before it was legalized, which, is definitely a step in the right direction in some ways. But we have to remember there was like a whole underbelly of people that like did benefit from it being illegal.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so I'll have to send you that link if you should check it out if you want to.
Yeah.
But like I learned so much about stuff in Denver, and she has a book coming out. If I remember correctly, it's Normal's Just a Setting. She loves the plant regardless on the other side of all the stuff that she's experienced. So
Wow.
and I think that proves that sometimes, we need the feminine spirit of the plant, because it can be very healing. And I think that that's why so many people are connected to it in the way that they are. Mexico's been torn apart by the plant.
Mhm.
And that's a really unfortunate thing. And so I have like kind of like you a lot of deep-seated like things around it where I'm just like, well, this sucks because my home country was like torn apart by like, the selling of this plant. But it's just like capitalism destroys everything. You know what I mean?
Yep.
People are so quick to judge finger quote drug wars in these countries, but what about like the United States and prohibition, like alcohol? It was the same shit. So
It was 100% the same shit. And also, it's an interesting thing that, especially I think in America, that we love to point fingers in other directions, either to avoid looking in our own backyard or to avoid looking at our own responsibility and the damage that we've created. So I have a real big problem with that, especially when it comes to drug wars.
and it's wild because Mexico is on its way to legalize it if they haven't already. I think, and if I could be mistaken, but I think in Mexico you can already have like 8 plants.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, and I'm like, if people are growing their own stuff, I feel like that's the best way to there's so much plant medicine there. There's so much like just connecting with, the spirit of this plant. Like, oh, there's just so much. And especially if you're someone who is a plant mom, I'm really bad with plants. I tried, but I'm not sure what that necessarily means, but I'm working on it. But I do have a lot of respect for people that grow. And kind of to circle back to Mexico, I find it so interesting. So I found in Mexico the two like big pillars of the Santa Muerte community.
Mm-hmm.
That is someone we both love, and I love that we're both devotees. In Mexico City, they actually use cannabis as an incense. So it's like some people will smoke it and, kind of take it in and indulge in it as an offering to her. But some people just really like the smell and they know it's something that she really enjoys. And it's funny because in my research, there's 2 women, the 2 pillars, they're both named Enriqueta,
Mm-hmm.
Romero, and Vargas. And Vargas has unfortunately passed due to cancer.
Yeah.
Her daughter is continuing on the legacy, which is beautiful.
One of the first things that I ever saw for her being used as an offering.
Mm-hmm.
And, admittedly, I've never seen anyone just burn it like on a charcoal, but I definitely have seen. It was one of the first things I saw. People smoking with her, sharing that plant spirit with her. I mean, it's definitely a staple in the practice and in the tradition. I think that because a lot of people don't necessarily understand or haven't done the work themselves to dismantle what they've been taught around cannabis, they see it as just another part of the negativity that they have associated with her. But if we go back to the roots of it, just like, if we go back to the roots of all things, it's really just the communing of spirits.
Yeah. And I think that here in the States, like, and I think most of society, we don't think of plants as spirits, like the energy that they bring to. And I think maybe that's why I'm probably bad at acknowledging them, because I don't take it all that it is, you know what I mean? I don't treat it like a small being. And that's a fault that I need to work on, because if not, I'm just gonna keep butchering these poor plants. I'm so sorry, plants. But that means that, I honestly just feel like I got more work to do on myself before I can have like a really stable relationship with my plant babies. So,
I mean, plants are in general, working with the spirits and not using the spirits, but really working with the spirits, I think is such a big foundation to reconnecting, right? Like getting back to what everything is based on plants. All things are based on plants. So getting back to our roots, but also, it's become so easy to go to your local shop and buy an ounce of this or that. It's become so easy to go to your local dispensary and buy whatever you need and then use it. Where if we grow these things, be it, your house plant, a tree, a cannabis plant, it becomes a whole different experience. And then you really have to, if you're going to then harvest that plant and work with that spirit in spiritual work, there's a mourning process that goes with it. You have raised this being from a little tiny seedling to watching it finally turn into a plant, to watching it develop leaves, to watching it flower, to then cutting its life. It becomes a form of necromancy for sure, but it
yeah.
it really connects you deeper to. And then there's huge picture, right? Then there's the realization of the houses that we live in and what animals and plants were sacrificed for us to have this dwelling. And we can go on and on from there, but growing a single plant and really, really watching and connecting and feeling how wild those spirits are, and then cutting it down.
Something that kind of I took away, the spirit of the plant, whatnot, because it's really essentially like a plant carcass, like dried herbs and stuff like that. And I wonder too, because I've always considered myself connection to spirit, and I feel like what is beyond this. And I wonder if maybe for also that reason, maybe it's a simpler way for me to work with it, because I have more death energy, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. And it's like something about like having to deal with the plant when it's alive. It's like, I can't handle you. That's something that now I'm like thinking about, because the more I think about it, I'm like, I do have the best results when I have dried plants.
Yeah, absolutely. You're working with the corpse, right? Then you have to reawaken that spirit. Then you have to recall, and it really is necromancy. When we're awakening the spirits of the plants that we're asking to help us in our spiritual practice, and even with cannabis, if we awaken that spirit and talk to that spirit before we ingest that spirit, what more could we get out of it? What more could the plant get out of communing with us? Could we then maybe start to heal some of those wounds that we as humans have even subjected onto these plants? Could we then, if before we ingest cannabis, CBD, whatever it is that's derived from that plant, if we awaken that spirit and talk to that spirit and ask for messages and let the spirit know that we're open to receive not only the physical effects and the mental effects and the relief, but what relief can we offer that spirit if we're open to receiving that? I wonder how far we could get with healing that spirit.
The relationship around cannabis is something that definitely has to be healed, because we need to see the decriminalization. We need to see people reap some sort of reparations. Like I know that Evansville, I think it is Illinois, one of the few places that I've seen that now that it is legal there, they're going to put funds aside reparations. And I hope that that is an actual thing they're doing and not just a lot of like hot breath,
Right.
because I mean, that is something we need to do in this country. Like, people truly act like the atrocities that this country is responsible as a whole are so long ago, you know? And it's just so baffling to me because the indigenous boarding school and the child bodies. And I think that it's one of those things that like people are like so horrified by this, but they shouldn't be, because just look at all of the things that, you know, were done to expand and to take people's culture away. And like, so it's like, why is murder surprising?
Yeah.
And I think the argument that I don't know if you've seen this, but the argument I keep seeing is that, oh, well, they died of tuberculosis. And I'm like, okay, but why weren't there enough funds to protect them and medicate them and separate them if this was like a funded, you know, that means that the interest of the children was never there.
Well, why were they there to begin with?
Exactly.
Can we, like, this is the thing that people can try to explain away or make excuses or whatever they want. But the fact is those children died without their families, without their parents, in a place that they never should have been. And if we as a collective can't accept our own responsibility in that, we are so much more fucked than we realize.
Yeah.
It's fucking horrifying to me.
No, this is honestly, it's a touchy subject for me too, because it's like we come from indigenous people who were colonized. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a reminder that that wound is still fresh.
These were human lives. Like, just accept that, like, we as a country have contributed to the murder and enslavement of people, not only around the world, but again, look in your own backyard, on this land. Like, if we can't accept that and start to do the work to dismantle our own still active contributions to that, there's no hope.
I think one thing I do have hope for is like Gen Z is so politically active that it really puts the rest of us to shame, like all the prior generations. And it's not even just about like the treatment of all different types of people and being active and caring about the treatment of all different types, but like beauty standards too. Like, it's so wonderful and beautiful to me that TikTok has allowed us to, you know, be able to see people out in the world and just like be like, you're beautiful. Like, don't let anybody else tell you whatever, because
Yeah.
we were just so gaslit our whole lives to be told that we needed products to make us beautiful and we had to look a certain way, and that how we look defined us. And it's just all white supremacist bullshit.
Yeah, it really is. I think that, you know, people have, and I, you know, myself too, like, I have a love-hate relationship with social media. And yes, there are things, there are issues with it, but it's really interesting and it's actually really beautiful to watch people create communities within communities, and to watch people celebrate each other in ways that we never really realized was okay to do.
Yeah.
It's like this generation is finally starting to kind of move out of this lack mentality that a lot of us have been raised around. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, they're definitely pushing for change in a way that we never did. And honestly, kind of coming back to the beginning statement of how like we were normalized with like police and this and that, like, and I think that that's the thing is like that generation specifically, from the time they were wee tots, like had to be normalized around police. Even myself, like, I remember the dare officer coming in grade school. I didn't necessarily interact with him, but I remembered seeing him.
Yeah.
5th grade was like the dare program.
Yeah, I think so.
It's interesting to me because I actually went through dare the year that 9/11 happened.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's so much more nuance there about like just everything. And it's really funny. I actually found my English journal from that time period, because honestly, it's just so interesting to see yourself from like a perspective of like, who was I back then? It's like how you were just living in a world that you were still trying to understand, where colonization and white supremacy and all this shit like just played such a huge part. And it's just so wild to like kind of see the world through those eyes again, even if just a little bit.
Oh, for sure. I mean, when I was growing up, I didn't even have like the terminology for the things that I knew I was feeling and the things I was seeing and the conversations I was having with my friends and family. Like, though that terminology wasn't present for us.
Yeah.
You know, maybe somewhere it was, but it definitely wasn't for me.
No, well, it's funny because we were talking before the cast about like how, we get to a point where you start to process a lot of that shadow work and things that you normalized kind of at a younger age because you're right, we didn't have the language. Like I didn't learn what a microaggression was until my early 20s, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
once I had that language, I was like, "Oh shit." Like that was because I had so many experiences as a kid where I felt uncomfortable or I just knew that like what I was experiencing was like not what was up.
Yeah.
And even to explain it to my parents was just like racism. But it doesn't feel like racism because I've been taught racism is XYZ, you know?
Yeah.
And they didn't have the language to be like, well, it is a form of racism, but it's a microaggression. You know what I mean? Because nobody wants to think they're friends and like, are like terrible people. And it's like, they're not terrible people. They've just been raised in a world where like they've normalized these things. And it's been like
Yeah.
language that they're okay with using. And until they heal those deep wounds, will we progress forward? But people have to want to do that. You know what I mean?
People have to want to do that. And now finally, there's these spaces of awareness that we have where we can actually be like, oh, I am doing this,
Mhm.
or oh, I have experienced this. So if now that we have these terms and this awareness around things that have always existed, perhaps now we can start the work on that. I was having a conversation with one of my friends, Leah, who's also a reader. She's an astrologist in Colorado, in Denver. But, her and I were having this conversation yesterday about how two realities can exist at once. So the reality of, yes, we've experienced microaggressions, and oh shit, have we been guilty of doing this harm to other people as well?
Of course. Yeah.
And what do we do then to heal our wounds around that? And also, as far as these, whether we have kids or not, we still all have a responsibility for these generations to come. So, what can we do to help generations to come?
And I think that that's what it's all about, right? It's about I hate that there's this statistic about how like it takes 80 years for any type of like social change to even happen. So here's to hoping that like maybe in the next few years we'll see more progress that won't take, 80 years because I think people are awakening in ways that like is really wonderful.
Mhm.
I have so many people who are wanting to have more profound conversations about these sort of topics and really expand and like learn. However, my whole point, I guess, in saying this is like philosophy and all that is great. Learning and getting perspectives is great. But if you're also not like putting your money where your mouth is and redistributing the funds,
Mhm.
it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I love this quote that I've heard that's like behind every woke man, especially white man,
Mhm.
there's a lot of people's labor
Yep.
that got them to understand how to treat women better, how to treat neurodivergent people better, how to treat like people of color better. Like they did not just get there on their own. You know what I mean? And I think that it truly does take a village in a lot of ways to change minds and change perspectives. And I think we should be grateful for those resources, but we also need to pay them. Like I think that
Yeah.
like especially if you have like a friend who posts on social media all the time and has made you aware of a subject that maybe you weren't aware of. I still have friends who happen to be white who I care about a lot. More acquaintances, they'll be like, "Well, I don't even know where to start." And I was like, "I mean, what do you mean? Like fund people of color things, like, if it's expensive, pay more because you have to remember it's a smaller operation a lot of the time. So if you want them to succeed, just shut up and pay it." And
Yeah.
there's all these different things. It's more than just lip service. You have to like put it into action every day.
You have to put it into action every day, and you have to learn how to not expect anything in return, I think.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you are sharing as a person who happens to be white, if you are sharing the work, whether it be, an Instagram share or a conversation or whatever it is, the work of people of color, you don't then expect something in return for that. That's definitely something that I've run into.
Uh-huh.
And it's something that I have to figure out how to address that in a way that is more constructive than me just being like, oh hell no, unfollow, you know?
Oh, I don't just unfollow. I do the remove follower thing where it's like you can't even see my things
Yeah.
anymore.
Oh, I'm definitely guilty of that.
But but I get that. I have a it's funny, I have a Gemini moon, so it's like I very easily can be very hot and very cold. And I need to work on that. But that's truly not a healthy way to be. And I am learning, but I also feel like the thing is like when you put down a boundary with someone and they react badly,
Mhm.
I think that you also from there have to decide whether or not it's a relationship you want to pursue. And for me, if it's not, then I am okay with like cutting and burning and letting it go.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, if it's not constructive to who you are as a person, then you have to just let it go.
Yeah, and if it ends up being more of a drain, you just have to let it go.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think it's one of those things too that I really want to talk about since we're in Mercury's retrograde right now. It's one of those things that like we make excuses or we have soft spots for people in different times of our lives because like we didn't have the tools, they didn't have the tools to be like, the person that, their best selves. But it also is one of those things that like if you don't ever learn boundaries, you're basically just like catching yourself on fire to keep other people warm. And that's such a terrible place to be.
Yep, it is. It's a really terrible place to be, especially when you know that that person wouldn't even like break a twig off to keep you warm, you know?
You feel this loyalty, but it's just like, I don't know. There's this thing that I keep seeing other people say. And in my own life, it's proven true as well. And it's like your biggest fan, your biggest like supporter is going to be a total stranger. And the person who is going to hate the most on the things that you're doing is going to be either like a close friend or family member. And that's so heartbreaking.
It's so heartbreaking, right? It's so like, wait a minute, man. We've been through some things in real life. Why can't you clap for me right now, you know? I always question when situations like that come up. I always question, what does the other person get out of me staying small?
Yeah.
You know, because whether it is, a monetary benefit or an ego benefit, or that just means that they don't have to challenge themselves or whatever it is, just realizing that it's really not even about you is so helpful. It goes right back to community care, right? And to how if we as a collective take care of each other, then we can dismantle the need for these larger systems that don't fucking work for anybody.
Yeah. So it's like, everyone, please just do your shadow work. Let's just root for everyone. Let's all vibrate higher. It's important. But Lou, thank you so much for taking the time. This was such a valuable conversation. And I really, truly feel like I'm just so lucky this is the part of like my life I enjoy. I'm like, I get to do this, for a living. Like I get to have meaningful and deep conversations with other like brujas out there that I really respect and just like love. So thank you for taking the time. And how can we support you?
Well, thank you. I appreciate the work you do so much. And I really, really, really genuinely want for you to win. And I really, really genuinely want for other people to find you because your voice is so valuable and your voice is so needed. So I really just thank you for being who you are and thank you for creating this platform that you've created. Sorry, I'm real emotional today. I don't know what's
No, it's okay. Like I value you so much. And in this world where it just seems like we're so many people just are interested in the aesthetic purpose, it's so important and valuable to find other people who are just trying to use the time that we have on this low vibe planet
yeah.
to try and make an impact and try to, help all of la gente like just be better. Like any type of person who has suffered through the traumas and tribulations of like colonialism, like I really just want you to win like so badly, like we both do.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. But please tell the people where they can support you, because I would just want them to throw all the money at you.
Oh, and you too. You can find me, of course, on the gram at the Death Witch. I finally opened my own little online shop with the help of my sister-in-law, Catherine, who takes all of my. I do all the styling, and she takes all of my product photos. And she is a 16-year-old, first generation American little business owner herself. You can find her at the Lash Candy, and you can find her photos on my website at thedeathwitch.black.
I didn't know how young she was. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
she's really, really, really rad. Watching her come to this place she's incredible.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I'm going to include her stuff in the show notes.
Thank you for listening. One last thing I forgot to mention, there is also a set of eyelashes from the Lash Candy. So you will be supporting Catherine, who at 16 years old is doing some really cool stuff. And I'm really glad that Lou mentioned that, because Gen Z really is out here doing some amazing things. So enter to win to also try that product. Thank you again for spending this time with me. I really appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day, and don't let Mercury's retrograde get you down. Bye.
Yeah.